Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you, as always. On today's show, there has been a proposal for a ceasefire from the Hamas side. We will give you all of the details on that. And also, really why Benjamin Netanyahu, right after, by the way, the proposal came out, and also, by the way, right after meeting with Anthony Blinken, rejected that proposal out of hand, calling a lot of the conditions ridiculous and saying that total victory is in hand. And I think, given what we've seen from Israel over the past few months, I don't really want to see what total victory would look like, as, Hamas still, though, does continue to launch attacks about Israel troops throughout the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, we'll just give you the latest as there are fears continuing of a broader attack from the much bigger Israeli military on Rafah. The Senate has blocked a bipartisan $118 billion bill on the U.S.-Mexico border and with Ukraine. And here we also have a pretty important, pretty good piece by Ryan Grimm about the Pakistani elections with some really crazy stuff that a lot of people aren't paying attention to. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. Okay, so with that being said, we're now going to get right to it, and we're going to start, with the really interesting ceasefire deal that was put forth, a three-stage ceasefire deal put forth on Tuesday that will last 135 days, lead to the end of Israel's war on Gaza, and the exchange of captives for Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners. According to a draft document of the proposal seen by Middle East Eye, the Hamas counteroffensive envisions 3 phases of the ceasefire, so 135 days, so 45 days for each phase. In the first phase, you have all women, children under 19, and the elderly and sick would be released from Gaza during the first 45-day phase in exchange for the release of all Palestinian female, children, and sick and elderly prisoners over 50 years over 50 years old. In Israeli jails. In addition, Israel released 1,500 Palestinian prisoners, including 500 with life sentences. Pretty. It definitely sets up a point for negotiations, but terms that we've seen here that Israel is not going to be ever really going to agree to, and it seems honestly like at this point, it's very, very unlikely for them to agree to terms with just the political reality of Benjamin Netanyahu's situation, unless it is forced upon by some broader power, aka Anthony Blinken. But we also saw Biden Biden say that these terms are a bit over the top. Obviously, though, it is very, very important that some of these really all of the Palestinian prisoners, especially with no charges held against them, should be released very, very, as soon as possible. They've been held hostage for, much longer and, arguably in worse conditions over a long period of time. We've seen pictures of Israel prisoners coming out of the detention, Gazan prisoners or Palestinian prisoners coming out of detention and looking like, much thinner, clear differences in appearance just by, a headshot of them coming in versus coming out of detention. We have seen some pretty clear differences that are just incredibly disturbing. So that there has to be some coming out, but obviously it is very, very unlikely for Israel to ever agree to allowing all of these Palestinian prisoners out. It is a thing that they use to really kind of hold over the Palestinians the same way, just any logic that would dictate you kind of taking captives. The first stage will also see Israeli forces withdraw from the populated areas in Gaza, allowing for freedom of movements for Palestinians across the Gaza Strip. Honestly, seems to be the thing that they have the most issue of this idea that it would contradict really the idea that they need to keep going in Gaza, they need to keep pushing. And they would also allow, for displaced people from the south to the north. So I think, kind of coming in Hamas with, maximalist aims, which only works if you have another side that is willing to negotiate. We'll get to Netanyahu's full response to this in a moment. But this phase would also see cessation of all forms of air activity over Gaza, including reconnaissance for the duration of the period. The proposal calls for a temporary cessation of military operations, a cessation of aerial reconnaissance, and a repositioning of Israeli forces far outside the populated areas of the entire Gaza Strip. During the second phase, all Israeli male hostages, including soldiers, would be released for a number of Palestinian prisoners to be determined at a later time. So 1,500 Palestinian prisoners, plus all female, children, sick, and elderly prisoners from over 50 years old from Israeli jails would be released, along with 1,500 other ones. And again, these people are they're tried in military courts. It's not the people who are in there, are part of what is undeniably in the Israeli jails are undeniably part of a two-tiered legal system here. In the third phase, the remains of the captives who have died would be exchanged. At the end of the third phase, Hamas would have expected the sides to reach an agreement on the end of the war. The truce would also increase the flow of food and other aid to the embattled territory, where 2 million Palestinians are facing hunger and dire shortages of basic supplies. In this draft appendix, Hamas also called for a end to the Israeli violence against the Al-Aqsa Mosque, demanding return to the mosque's pre-2002 security status. Another request calls for the resumption of all humanitarian services offered to the population all over the Gaza Strip by UNRWA, a crucial lifeline for the Palestinian people, supporting 6 million refugees who live within and outside the occupied territory. So, Netanyahu kind of dismissing this out of hand. So it's very, very important to say, not the first time that he's done this, dismissed any sort of, calls by Hamas to lighten things up throughout the course of October 7th. So it kind of does give lie to the notion that, only, Hamas, all they ever do is reject ceasefires. They just only care about wiping Israel off the map. They never propose anything. This stuff is clearly not true. And, Netanyahu obviously rejected this ceasefire. He said negotiations with the group were not going anywhere and described their terms as bizarre. Apparently talks, though, still are continuing to try and reach some sort of a deal because Netanyahu, he is facing some political pressure to get back the hostages, especially from some of the, more powerful elements of the kind of liberal opposition, based more in the cities on the coast like Tel Aviv and Haifa and all those places, where you kind of have a lot more of the liberal Israelis who really care the most about the hostages. But it really has kind of become a politicized issue, which we'll also, get into a little bit later on. But here is how Netanyahu sounded. Unless you speak Hebrew, you won't be able to understand, but I will translate, saying we are on our way to absolute victory, total victory. The victory is in our reach. It's not just a matter of years or tens of years. It is a matter of months. The IDF creates wonders and is moving forward in a systematic way to get all the goals of the war that we at the political level required from it: the elimination of Hamas, the release of all hostages, and the promise that Gaza won't be a threat to Israel anymore. So there you have, whatever a non-threatening Gaza looks like. I think is very, very interesting. I think something that people should be asking Israel a lot more is, what does a non-threatening Gaza look like to you? Because these are the people. It's not up for the Palestinians to answer this, because it is Israel that is propagating this war. Is Israel that is committing these crimes and are trying to, quote unquote, create a non-threatening Gaza. And I think they need to be obviously really, really clear about what that looks like. I think we're seeing what that looks like. We're seeing from, the South African case. We're seeing from the targets of the Israeli military. It looks like a place with no Palestinian society left in it, which I think is becoming more and more clear. If Hamas will survive in Gaza, it's only a question of time until the next massacre. Israel is expected to take issue with Hamas' counteroffer, but this response is a categorical rebuke, and Israeli officials clearly see an effort by Hamas to end the war on its terms as utterly unacceptable. So there also is, the kind of fear of, if you agree to peace on Hamas' terms, it's going to be incredibly embarrassing. What you're having here is you hear him say it. Hamas cannot survive in Gaza, so Hamas, they want to end this war. It's been absolutely devastating for the entire Palestinian population. let's not forget what's going on in, the West Bank as well, and with the resulting, cutoff from UNRWA, which we've seen was based on no evidence, literally no evidence. Canada, the EU, all started off based on literally no evidence whatsoever of any wrongdoing by UNRWA staff. This is one of the most important lifelines for aid that any Palestinian, can have. And these are Palestinians who do live in Arab countries, in refugee camps that have, just kind of been left to rot by those Arab governments, places like Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. That is, it's a very, very important lifeline. And they are talking about, something that would be in their rational self-interest, which is ending the war, getting back towards peace. And Israel, they have been unable to bring back hostages. They've been unable to bring back to really take out Hamas in any significant way, to the point there. There's even recently, we're still seeing, I just watched a video, one of those red triangle videos yesterday that was taking place in Gaza City. That was supposed to be destroyed. That was supposed to be under full Israeli operational control months ago. So that is the reality of the situation. Like, it's going to be, I think the question will be, when will things start to sink in that they can't achieve the goals that they want to achieve, and they can't just keep going, until Hamas is gone, because they're having a really very damn hard time at killing Hamas, and American generals now are standing to say this. So it just can't be something that you have to wait till the stated goals are achieved. You have to wait. It's just not looking like that way is very feasible whatsoever. But anyway, we just have to get into the current situation here, where there really is some panic on the ground in Rafah over this looming ground attack. Hani Mahmoud in Rafah reporting for Al Jazeera, not just about the permanent ceasefire here, but about the UN Security Council resolution and last month's interim ruling in the ICJ. What people are experiencing in the southern part of Gaza is a surge on attacks from air, land, and sea. So obviously, Israel in flagrant violation of the order, which said it should do everything in its power to stop killing members of the Palestinian group, which is important to say. But what people are interested in, again, is a temporary ceasefire. And, Hamas rejected the 2-month plan because, if their people, if they went back to their people, and, it is kind of an important, they need to kind of maintain this legitimacy here. If they went back to their people and they were like, oh, we got a ceasefire, but it's for 2 months. It's just like, 2 months and we go back, to hell again, because, I don't think any Gazan would have a real right or kind of justification to trust them saying anything about, we'll stop after 2 months. It's just like, if you've gone through the past, 3-4 months, like, why would you trust anything Israel says? Why? And if you're just looking at the news, if you're looking at the state of Israeli society, why would you trust it? I just do not get it in any way. Netanyahu, according to analysis from Sharam Akbarzadeh, I definitely butchered that name, I apologize, a professor of Middle East and Central Asian politics at Deakin University, says Israel's leader is averse to signing a truce deal as would give Hamas credibility and recognition, which I think is something that we see in his remarks that we just played. As he knows his political future is very much tied to right-wing politicians, and he's not going to antagonize them by stepping back from destroying Hamas. And again, that's a big part of this calculus. But then the question is, how long can he keep stepping on? With the hostages not coming back, with the Israeli military, not really diminishing Hamas's capabilities in a super, super, super noticeable way. How long will this kind of weird situation continue to go on? Despite Antony Blinken's disappointing visit to the region, which has not yet yielded a truce deal, the U.S. will continue to unconditionally back Israel, Akbarzadeh predicted. It does put the U.S. in a difficult position at the end of the day, but the United States is Israel's steadfast ally in the international arena, and it's not going to abandon that position, which makes very much, clearly makes sense. A Palestinian man has also been killed, another by Israeli forces. The Israeli newspaper of Haaretz reports the Palestinian man shot dead by the Israeli troops near the entrance to the village of Deir Sharaf in Nablus has died. Wafa news agency also updated its earlier report, adding another young Palestinian man was injured after being shot in the hand. A confrontation broke out when soldiers closed a checkpoint and prevented Palestinians from crossing. The Israeli army claimed that one of the men opened fire on them when the soldiers stopped his car. So again, just a daily increasing road closures, normal journeys, 15-minute, 10-minute journeys can take 2 hours. You're constantly stretched, you're humiliated, you're waiting these lines, and more Palestinians are dying, getting chased out of their villages in the West Bank since October 7th than ever before. It creates a very, very volatile situation. Some more analysis here from Hashem Al-Ahilbara. Says indications that we are moving towards a critical phase of any potential agreement between Israel and Hamas. Osama Hamdan, a senior Hamas leader, says a delegation is now going to Cairo to talk to the Egyptians. Oftentimes, these talks precede an official announcement of the deal, as the Egyptians have played, a pretty big role, the Qataris as well, in terms of meeting in any sort of real truce. So, Ahlabara here is saying, so I think we have reached a point where we're really what we're really talking about is operational aspects of the agreement, and what's happening behind closed doors is a real genuine push towards that. So maybe some way that they will be able to meet in the middle off of some of Hamas's terms. But this really, the rejection of Netanyahu yesterday was a pretty big step. So if they can pull something out in terms of a ceasefire, it seems, that would obviously be absolutely huge, and it would be very, very important, especially a permanent ceasefire. Oh, my God, where aid can actually get in. But also, just based on Israel's public projection, the government's political situation, it seems very, very, unlikely for it to happen at the time, despite some of this stuff. We also have to remind ourselves that we are approaching Ramadan in March, a month that puts a load of political pressure on leaders in this part of the world. If Israeli bombardment continues, then I would not see a chance of any deal in the near future. So again, really, especially that goes with the attacks on Rafah, that Hani Mahmoud reporting for Al Jazeera in Rafah right now, saying it is a big deal. Meanwhile, Hezbollah is also attacking Israeli barracks with missiles and achieving a direct hit in the north. That was just 4 hours ago, so that we also have to point out, Reporters Without Borders have condemned more killings of Palestinian journalists in 4 months of conflict. Israel has decimated Palestinian journalism with complete impunity, with a staggering death toll of more than 84 journalists killed and at least 20 in the line of duty, while Palestinian sources say the number of journalists killed is at least 123. Absolutely horrific. And also, probably the most horrific thing is these, Western journalists who, whenever one of their own, like that guy Evan Gershkovich or whatever, get locked up in a country like Russia or China or Iran, everyone goes crazy. They're changing their social media profile pictures. They're speaking about it every possible way they can. Journalism is under attack. We have a tough job as journalists, and we need to protect other journalists who fight for the truth. Again, these are some of the bravest, not just journalists, but people in the entire world at the moment. And yet the Western world Western journalists are completely and utterly silent. Meanwhile, it's pretty important to talk about this from the other night, or last night. Repeated American attacks on Iran-backed militias in Iraq are pushing its government to end the mission of the U.S.-led coalition in the country, said Army spokesperson Yehia Razul. The comments come after a U.S. airstrike killed a senior commander of Kataib Hezbollah at a residential area of the capital, Baghdad. And, whatever Iraqis feel about, this is your average Baghdadian, just chilling there in a residential area, he probably doesn't really care that much if Kataib Hezbollah is there or not. He just does not want to have bombs going off in his residential area. And I feel like it's very, very clear that the average Iraqi would especially after what America has done in the region since 2003, would much, much, much rather have an Iranian-backed militia, having influence and being the broader force in the region, if it means a more peaceful situation, than having Americans be the ones creating peace in the region, because that's what they've been trying to do for the past since 2003, and well before. Which it seems like it's pathetic. It's sad. It's a crime. It's multiple crimes, but it's also just hilarious, the idea that the Americans could, so any kind of Iraqi would prefer Americans coming in making peace in this situation, or that Americans think that Iraqis would even want that. Israeli forces have released 71 detainees from Gaza, including 19 female prisoners, through the southern Karem Abu Salem crossing, according to the Rafah agency. Israel has not disclosed the number of Palestinians it arrested or forcibly disappeared from the Gaza Strip since its ground invasion began in late October, but we have heard some really harrowing reports and seen some very harrowing pictures of people being tortured, with open gunshot wounds, just being left to sit there. Some, camps where certain members of the Gaza Strip, some certain citizens of the Gaza Strip have been concentrated, and they have been, it's fill in the blank. We do not know. But I think it's fair to say they're not giving them, cookies and tea and a great time. Meanwhile, so Hamas delegation headed by Khalil al-Hayya, deputy head of the movement in Gaza, arrived in Cairo for discussions on a potential ceasefire with Gaza. Egyptian officials estimated the new negotiations would take at least 10 days before a truce begins as part of the first phase of the deal. And again, that has to be, obviously run through and approved with Israel. They just seem to be way too far apart than a lot of these noises coming out of, Arab media. But we will see. Israeli forces have set fire to 3,000 housing units in the Gaza Strip, with the loss exceeding tens of millions of dollars. Again, with all the property inside, doesn't include the massive amounts of controlled demolitions we've also seen them doing. The Israeli occupation forces deliberately burn homes in order to inflict damage and loss on citizens, especially those forced to leave their homes and were displaced, it said in a statement. Many occupation soldiers have posted videos and photographs of themselves on social media while participating in their unjustified burning of houses in Gaza and showing off their joy in these burning operations. Again, definitely a violation of international law as well. Hani Mahmoud Moore from Rafah says intensified strikes on the city are making Palestinians fear permanent displacement, similar to 1948, while being pushed into Egypt. Obviously, kind of the worst case scenario for the Palestinians that Israelis have been pushing for, from the jump, when it comes to Israel, and that fear is unsurprisingly growing among the Palestinians, and with the death toll that's now rising to 27,000. Just continuing. Again, bombardments as the continuing bombardments in the hemmed-in Rafah, as Israeli troops have been ordered to attack with overnight raids in Rafah, which Israel once declared a safe zone for displaced Palestinians, killing 14 people, including 5 children. The area now shelters more than 1.2 million people, most of them fleeing Israeli attacks from other parts of Gaza that we have already seen. Almost kind of an erotic situation. Most of the people in Gaza to get to Gaza were fleeing from other parts of historic Palestine. And again, more evidence coming out. Canadian officials have not seen intelligence linking UNRWA officials with Hamas, according to reports. And this is pretty interesting. A poll of Israelis released by a nonpartisan think tank, Israeli Democracy Institute, found that 51% of participants believe that recovering the captives from Gaza should be the main goal of Israel's war. In comparison, 36% said the top priority should be toppling Hamas. So when it comes to that, and when it comes to the political pressures, it's only 51%. It's a very slim majority. It's the slimmest majority. It's like, and you would think that the way a lot of the liberals have been elevated in terms of the discussion of Israeli politics, you would think, it's like 81%. But no, it shows the real kind of nature of the Netanyahu spin slowly working and coming through here, is that we need to destroy Gaza. If the hostages are in their way, that's too bad. They're kind of almost acceptable collateral damage, which was really, really horrific stuff. Meanwhile, speaking of, something that's being treated as collateral damage. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said that one of its teams was carrying out a mission to evacuate a number of wounded people on Wednesday, and it was deliberately targeted. Paramedic Mohammed Al-Omari was killed as a result, as well as 2 of his colleagues being wounded. This brings the number of colleagues killed while carrying out the humanitarian work since the beginning of Gaza war to 12. Honestly, have been, with the amount of killings and attacks on paramedics. I know we talked about the last show, a paramedic that was saved. I'm surprised it is not more. Hasham El-Ahilbar here with some more analysis. This is really an extraordinary time in this part of the world because we are not just talking about a deal between Israel and Hamas. It is coupled with another broader geopolitical goal by the Americans. They are hoping for a truce deal happening before the holy month of Ramadan, as it could be conducive to the normalization of ties between the Saudis and Israelis. The Brett McGurk type of fantasy of getting Israel and Saudi to normalize, and then Saudi, in some way, they essentially functionally have been normalized for quite a long time, and they're facilitating aid, and helping the Israelis beat the Houthi blockade right now, which is pretty important to say. At the same time, they're trying to work out what happens for Gaza, who is going to take over, whether it be the Palestinian Authority, whether it be the Saudis having some influence over that, is something that if there's any hint of Saudi involvement, is something the Palestinians are, very likely to not take kindly to. Apparently, Akiva Eldar, a political columnist and analyst at the Haaretz newspaper, told Al Jazeera that Netanyahu is being cautious regarding the potential new deal with Hamas. Netanyahu doesn't actually leave the door open when he completely refuses to put a deadline to this war. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to say no to a president of the United States who is personally involved in the efforts to release the prisoners, Eldar said, expressing his skepticism about Netanyahu's ability to meet his commitment to get rid of Hamas. Netanyahu is interested in negotiations, but I'm not sure if the majority of the captives will be alive to wait. They cannot wait until Netanyahu and Hamas will find absolute, ultimate common ground. Yeah, and again, this is what we see. Like the voices, like opposition leader Yair Lapid, Israeli society is determined to bring back the captives and eradicate Hamas, said Lapid. Well, it seems like they are starting to care. The government definitely cares more about Hamas than the hostages, and I think we can read that broadly as to kind of an extension of attacking Gazan civilians, because that's what's been happening so far. But only 51% say that the hostages are the top priority. That is just not enough. And as a dozen Israeli soldiers have been wounded in the past 24 hours, I think that is just going to continue to take a toll. And they're going to start to realize, this Hamas stuff, it's not going to be going as well as we think. And I think 20% of the incidents even are from friendly fire. So they're doing Hamas work for them. More reports are emerging from Khan Yunis of people in the vicinity of the Nasser hospital being targeted by Israeli snipers, paramedics unable to get out of the hospital to help the injured and remove the dead from the street. The western part of the Gaza Strip, all remaining residential buildings have been systematically demolished by controlled explosions. Again, this is not an eradication of Hamas type thing. This is a really serious attack on all of Gazan society here. And there is no denying that. All right, we do have to shift a little bit to the home front now as we go to our next story. Yeah, again, a lot more updates I could have given you on that, but we do have to go to Washington, where the Senate blocked a bipartisan and national security bill that also dealt with the border from advancing on Wednesday, as Democrats accused Republicans of bending the political wishes of Donald Trump at the expense of their constituents. The vote was 49-50, with 45 Democrats and 4 Republicans supporting the bill's advancement. 4 Republicans. Again, a supposedly bipartisan deal negotiated. I think James Lankford, who is supposedly kind of a Tea Party type guy through and through, tried to negotiate this bill, which was a wish list of all kind of Trump's desires on immigration, which is really, really kind of a horrific situation. So, again, to give you some kind of context on this bill, if you're not exactly sure how it's been following and really how we got to this point, essentially we have Biden coming in and wanting to get more aid for Ukraine and Israel. Let's be real, and Mike Johnson, the lovely House Speaker, essentially says, well, we're going to have to do something about the border here. So Biden says, okay, we're going to send in some negotiation people. We're going to send, okay, Chris and Sinema, you got it. Negotiate for us with the Republicans. And I think they also sent Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, who's pretty, right-wing in terms of the Senate Democratic Caucus, which is definitely saying something. And they come up with a bill that essentially leads to much, much more border enforcement, does have, at least one good thing, which is the more money for, and more judges for judging asylum claims, which is a big, big problem with, a lot of people coming to the border claiming asylum. They can, just kind of go in undocumented, which, in my opinion, does not help either the country or the, people or, the people already in the country. But, this bill would have sent more money from asylum judges, but also would really, if there's, up to 5,000 people or 5,000 encounters per day, which, there has been for quite a while, it shuts down the asylum process completely. It gives Biden control to, shut down the border completely. And, eventually, very likely, Donald Trump control to shut down the border completely, gives the executive a lot more power and, tons and tons of more money for ICE, much, much more in terms of border agents, and no type of pathway to citizenship, no way to try and include these people that are coming into our country, whether it be asylum seekers or not. There is no effort to, include them into our country, induct them into our, workforce, and give them opportunity to be productive citizens, that so many of them definitely, clearly the evidence shows, and, the anecdotal interviews show, want to be. So they come in that, they come to that, exchange. They give essentially away everything for that bill when it comes to immigration. They give a Donald Trump's wish list, but because it is an election, and this is, again, in exchange for, as Biden loses support hand over fist with his base, he decides to give Trump everything he wants on the border for more money for Israel, which is the reason why he's been losing support with the base, and Ukraine, because, again, everyone's so worked up about Ukraine, at least in Washington they are. But it's just a really, really stupid move in terms of, pissing off Democrats. It's also a really stupid move because the people who are aggravated in the border, they're going to vote for Trump. They're not going to vote for you. It just does not make any sense. You're just, what you should be doing is something Democrats can never, ever do, is trying to make an affirmative argument about why you think, your kind of compassionate vision of the border, which you ran on. And literally one of the things Biden said is the reason why I got in, because I want to recapture the soul of the nation. I want to be more inclusive. I want to be nicer. And I just don't want to do everything that Trump did with the family separation stuff. So, but he is essentially continuing that same logic. He's expanding the Trump doctrine on immigration and asking us, to vote for him against Trump, because Trump, is going to do all these horrible things to immigrants and, harm migrants' rights. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It is patently ridiculous, and it's offensive. And the stuff that we're supposed to be giving up, this stuff that we're giving up to apparently get something good, which is more money to a genocidal regime in Israel, and, more money to Ukraine, which is obviously a very different situation, but a situation the U.S. really has not handled any better in terms of just pumping up Ukraine with endless amounts of money, giving them no kind of strategy for peace. And the moment things get rough, in the Middle East, they're out. They drop Ukraine like a hot box of rocks. Don't give any, path for peace. Don't give any path for continued funding for war. Just leave Ukraine to figure it out themselves. And, it's looking very likely you just get completely blasted by Russia. It's a really, really awful situation, and just makes, Biden look absolutely principle-less, principle-free, and incredibly, incredibly weak. So, again, really, really remarkable situation. And this bill would have literally completely defunded UNRWA and make it illegal for the United States to send money back to UNRWA. And Biden and the United States Senate Democratic Caucus were like, let's go. Bernie was the only no vote, I believe, on this from the Democratic side. So it is just like it's just stick after stick after stick hitting you in the face if you're a Democratic supporter. I mean, and I just cannot comprehend how this is not a bigger deal, and the fact that, Republicans were the only one stopping this awful bill from happening because they, I guess, wanted more. Or, I mean, really the biggest thing, they didn't really, from what I've been hearing, have many systemic objections to the bill. The only problem is, screw Biden, he screwed up the border, we're not going to give him anything to help him fix the border. we should let the American people decide in November. They just want to give Trump a chance to get in there. And because Trump said don't support it, they don't support it. So, again, it's just like it is a just complete failure, a complete legislative failure by Biden, and really does a great job of highlighting the case that, he's going to be so different from Trump. He's going to be so ethical. He's going to be so moral. We've seen the last 4 years, and we've seen this bill, and, it just gets more and more disproven by the day. All right, to our last story now. As Pakistan prepares to determine its next government in a general election, which is going on right now, concerns are intensifying about electoral irregularities. A growing body of evidence points to election manipulation and political interference by the Pakistani military. Now, if you made it to this point in the show, it's very, very important. It's going to get a little hidden history-esque. So, yeah, it's going to be very informative. Ryan Grimm has a great article on this here in The Intercept. So Pakistan, they were supposed to go to the polls last year. The country's constitution has 5-year terms for both national and provincial assemblies, as well as the post of prime minister. But when the former Prime Minister Imran Khan's government was toppled by a parliamentary coup backed by the Pakistani military and U.S. State Department in 2002, it was only in its 4th year. Since then, the Pakistani military has ruled from the shadows, trying to delay the inevitable election, while at the same time trying to ensure that the massively popular Khan and his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party, or PTI, do not come back to power. Inside Pakistan, the media is being completely muzzled. Outside Pakistan, the upcoming election is being called the least credible in the country's history and more like a coronation, where the military is understood merely to be choosing a new civilian face for its rule. While the U.S. State Department has consistently said that it has not yet made its determination about the fairness of Pakistani elections, and we know, again, how much the State Department cares about, loves, and over the years has advocated for democracy. Again, please do check out Hidden History for more on that, especially our most recent season. They have really not made any kind of move to stop this. But Summer Lee and Nathaniel Warren on Twitter have both posted about it, really kind of across the political aisle. On a Pakistani ballot paper, each political party has an electoral symbol. Candidates in each of Pakistan's hundreds of constituencies have their party symbols next to their names, a critical guide for a substantial portion of the electorate who can't read. PTI candidates were stopped from using their unified electoral symbol, a cricket bat, by the court, based on a technicality no other party was subjected to. This means that each PTI candidate is assigned a random symbol and has to run an individual campaign. With the loss of the bat, PTI was converted from a formidable political party to a loose group of individuals with no legal affiliation overnight, effectively disenfranchising millions of citizens who have placed their trust in PTI as a political entity. The move has been severely criticized as a huge blow to the fundamental rights by Pakistani legal fraternity and civil society. The implications go even further. If, by some miracle, PTI can't overcome all of the obstacles and win a majority in the parliament, the technically unaffiliated candidates would be missing key legal protections and could be vulnerable to bribes and coercion by the military. The Pakistani Telecommunication Authority is now chaired by a retired general. The chair of the PTA has the ability to shut down the whole country's internet or specific websites on a moment's notice. He has shut down social media and the internet every time Khan's PTI held an election-related event online in the past few months, affecting more than 100 million users. The Pakistani media has already expressed concerns that the internet might be shut down on election day to discourage people from voting. Lending credibility to those concerns, a top minister on Tuesday hinted at the possibility of an internet shutdown on election day, alarming human rights organizations including Amnesty International and prompting them to write an open letter and put out a statement. So, again, it seems to be pretty serious, and we've already seen, if you go on social media, some of the irregularities coming up from Pakistan at the moment, right now. 3 major court decisions in quick succession were made just before the elections, and it's been seen in Pakistan as a message from the Pakistani military establishment. The message is intended not only for the voters, but also for the candidates, signaling the influence and control wielded by the military. So just 2 days ago, a local electoral official complained that in a letter circulated to the Electoral Commission of Pakistan, the key software used in managing elections was behaving oddly. In the letter, officials cites the official cites specific issues with the software and claims the data related to its staff was erased. The weakness of the system, he says here, has created many issues and raises a question mark on the reliability and the validity of the tool/software. This shows that either the election management system is an utter failure or there is someone else that controls and manages the system behind the veil, he wrote in a document leaked online. So, again, really disturbing stuff about this National Database and Registration Authority, the government department that is usually headed by a civilian, but since last year has been run by, surprise, surprise, a general in the military. This NADRA, as a primary custodian of all Pakistan's data, from population to demographic data to voter rolls, and is supposed to play a key role in conducting elections along with the Election Commission of Pakistan. So as long as the Pakistani military has direct control of NADRA, it controls all the systems used to administer elections and transmit the results. So really, again, another very, very disturbing situation. Last week, 10 PTI activists were killed in a bomb blast at an election rally in the Balochistan province. The same week, a PTI candidate and senior leader was shot dead in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Okay, let me try that again. The Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in separate incidents. I'm sure that second time wasn't much better. But in Karachi, a PTI candidate's car was shot at. So again, just attacks, again, on all these different candidates here. Really, really scary and pretty blatant stuff. We've also seen some police raids where we have unknown people and masked government officials snatching the nomination papers of PTI candidates as soon as they would go to file them, thereby preventing them from filing to run before the deadline. Of the candidates who did manage to file, those who were not arrested faced frequent police raids on their home. Another raid at a political candidate's home, an American police officer who happened to be vacationing in Pakistan was also arrested. He was subsequently released following an intervention by the U.S. Embassy. In another police raid at a political activist's house, the activist's father suffered a heart attack and died. Virtually every notable PTI member's house has been raided and ransacked. In addition, PTI rallies and meetings have been violently shut down by the police, and scores of workers have been arrested. In one constituency in northern Pakistan, there were reports of a police shooting at a PTI rally on Tuesday, the last day of campaigning. Almost every PTI rally was attacked by the police, which is absolutely insane. A PTI candidate, Zartaj Gul Wazir, was sitting on the road crying after a police attack on her rally. In other areas that have not been so violent, comical social media videos of police chasing PTI activists through the streets have emerged. In PTI strongholds, there have been even reports of police ticketing people in unusually high numbers and confiscating their ID cards, which won't be returned until after the election, meaning that they will be unable to vote. So again, just absolutely complete and utter, manipulation of the situation here. I also saw, Ryan Grimm tweeting out an AI video, this video of a candidate holding a phone to the screen, saying this video on the phone is an AI video saying that I'm dropping out of the race, so please don't vote for me, is a complete fraud. So they're using AI here at this point. They're abducting candidates and their families, and tons of voter suppression. There is a sense of hope, though, that still presents among many in Pakistan. Nothing illustrates this contradiction more than the two women, Yasmin Rashid and Aliyah Hasma Malik, who are contesting elections from jail. These two political prisoners, running their campaigns from incarceration against all odds, have become symbolic figures representing resistance against military interference in Pakistani democracy. The election in Pakistan is going to be a referendum against the establishment, a local euphemism for the Pakistani army and associated partners, said Hussein Nadeem, an analyst and former policy specialist working with the Pakistani government. This is why, despite all efforts by the establishment otherwise, we can forecast an historic turnout in the election. The brazen electoral rigging, the persecution of political leaders, and the sham court trials have substantially increased the stakes. In the weeks leading up to the election, Khan, who was trying to run again, is sentenced to a cumulative 31 years in prison. His political party confronts the imminent risk of outright prohibition, with his motley crew of candidates on the run, evading authorities and attempting to canvass for the votes clandestinely, even using artificial intelligence. Yet PTI resisted calls to boycott the election. The goal, they say, is to win in such a dramatic and runaway fashion that even all of the above can't steal it. So a very, very interesting and very, very important election going on in one of the most important countries in the world, a nuclear armed power, by the way, that the U.S. has been trying to interfere in for quite a bit. So we will keep an eye on it for you. So all the time I got for you guys today. This has been Newsflash. We're back tomorrow.